Have you ever tried to tell someone what it is like to believe in God? Maybe a friend or a family member, someone who knows you, who may be curious. As a long ago work colleague of mine once put it, why do you go for all that stuff? Has someone ever asked you about your prayer life? What that is like? If that has happened to you, what was it like to try to talk about it? I found it tough at times. Have you? Someone asks you why you believe or how your life is different because you do, and there are no words that are true enough, right enough, big enough to explain. I rummage around for something to say, something that does not sound too vague or too churchy. You can talk about how your heart seems full to bursting sometimes, or how you feel this sense of deep peace even during tough circumstances, or about the sense of kinship you feel with other human beings. In the end, it's always going to be hard to talk directly about holy things. After all, how can words describe what is beyond all words? How can human beings speak of God? In the 1500s, St. John of the Cross, who was a man of prayer, a reformer, a monk, a mystic, and a teacher, among other things, including spiritual director to Teresa of Avila, said this: God's first language is silence. Everything else is a poor translation. We may not do it well, but because we must somehow try, we tend to talk about what we cannot say in terms of what we can. That is, we try to describe holy things by talking about ordinary things and hope that we can make the connections. Believing in God is like coming home, we say, like being born again. It's like being held in peace. It's like falling in love. We cannot say what it is exactly, but we can try and say what it's like. And sometimes that helps us get at least a hint of the message. The poets and writers among us may remember that this getting at the meaning of a thing by comparing it to some other thing is called speaking in metaphor. And sometimes the comparisons that we use in metaphors and other conversations are familiar. We say his eyes were blue as a robin's egg or blue as the sea. But sometimes the comparisons we hear are surprising or startling, even jarring. His eyes were as blue as ink spilled on a page, or blue as a bruise. When the comparisons catch us by surprise, they can make us stop and think. How can those two things be alike? How deep does that comparison go? Is it telling us more? When the comparisons startle us, our everyday understanding of things can be broken open, and we can be invited to explore them again. To go inside them and see what is new. Jesus did it all the time. Throughout the Gospels, and especially in Matthew, which we are hearing now, he was always making comparisons. Sinners are like lost sheep. The word of God is like seed sown on different kinds of ground. The kingdom of heaven is like a wedding feast. The kingdom of heaven is like, he says over and over, telling his followers stories about brides and grooms, sheep and shepherds, wheat and weeds. Have you ever wondered why he talked that way? Why didn't he just come right out and say what he meant? When he asked his hearers today, do you understand all that I've just said? And they said yes. I heard some of you guys laughing today. I wonder, did they? If anyone in the world was qualified to speak directly about God, surely it was Jesus. And yet he too spoke indirectly, making surprising comparisons between holy and ordinary things, breaking open our understanding of things and inviting us to explore them all over again. In this story we have just heard, he launches a volley of such comparisons. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, like yeast, like buried treasure, like a merchant looking for pearls, like a net thrown into the sea. Those images come quickly, one right after another, with no preparation, no explanation, no time for questions and answers. It doesn't generally seem that it's like him to be in such a rush. He's usually a better storyteller than this, gathering his listeners around him and sliding into the tale with one of those time-honored introductions. There once was a landowner. When he does this, his followers settle down to listen and try to puzzle out what Jesus is telling them. But these 5 flashes of the kingdom, how's that for a title? 5 flashes of the kingdom, come at us so quickly that there is no time to settle down to these at all. Jesus almost zings us with them, like scenes glimpsed through the window of a speeding train. It's almost as if he doesn't want us to think too much about any of them, but instead be dazzled by their number and their variety. They are a lot to digest at one sitting. So, what do they have in common if we look at them all together? The striking thing about all of these images is that something is hidden. The mustard seed is hidden in the ground. The yeast in the dough. The treasure in the field. The pearl among other stuff. The net in the ocean. If the kingdom is like these, then it's not something we see easily. It's something that we must search for. Something below the surface of things, waiting there to be discovered and claimed. Stories like these have always captured the human imagination. Maybe one of the modern incarnations of this age-old story is the TV program Antiques Roadshow. Bring in that old box in the attic and learn the contents are hidden heirlooms, worth hundreds, maybe even thousands. Find a jewel at a garage sale. It is the stuff that legends are made of. The treasure suddenly discovered and recognized amidst much celebration. That's what the kingdom is like, says Jesus. Whether it begins as a seed in the ground or a treasure hidden in a field, the kingdom comes when it is no longer hidden, but revealed. Now that's exciting business, but where do we begin? Without a treasure map or a roving antiques expert or an ancient field, where do we start looking for the hidden kingdom of heaven? All these metaphors are fine, but when it comes right down to hunting the true kingdom of heaven, where are we supposed to start? Maybe we are to start someplace really holy, really extraordinary, like a medieval monastery maybe, or in the slums of Calcutta tending the dying as Mother Teresa did. Maybe we should start in Jerusalem, or the Vatican, Canterbury, or the National Cathedral. Then again, it may not matter where we are exactly, as long as we keep our eyes open for clues. Because if the kingdom of heaven is hidden in this world, it is hidden well. And only the most dedicated detectives among us stand a chance of finding it. Unless, of course, God reverted to the oldest trick in the book and hid it in plain view. You know, there's always that possibility that God decided to hide the kingdom of heaven, not in any of the extraordinary places that treasure hunters would look, but rather in the least extraordinary, namely the ordinary circumstances of our lives. Like the silver spoon in with the stainless, or the diamond necklace in with the rhinestones. The extraordinary hidden with the ordinary. The kingdom of heaven, all mixed in with the humdrum of our days. As easy to find as the first tender shoots above ground after a long winter, or a child's smile awakening from sleep, or a sunrise sparkling across snow. All of them signs of the kingdom of heaven, clues to the holiness hidden in the dullness of our days. Dullest of our days. Jesus knew it all along. Why else would he talk about the kingdom of heaven in terms of seeds and fields, yeast and fish, unless he meant to be telling us that the kingdom of heaven has to do with everyday life? That our treasure is buried not in some far-off exotic place that requires a special map, but that X marks the spot right here, right now, in all the ordinary places and people and activities of our lives. If we want to speak of heavenly things, he seems to say, we may begin by speaking about earthly things. If we want to describe what is beyond all words, we may begin with words we know, ordinary words like person, bird, air, bread, sea, joy. The kingdom is like these things. The kingdom is found in these things. These are the places to dig for the kingdom of heaven. These are the places to look for the will and reign and presence of God. If we can't find them here, we'll never find them anywhere else. For earth is where the seeds of heaven are sown. And their treasure is the only one worth having.
Amen.